Hi, I'm Tim Roble and welcome back to another episode. On today's episode, I'm going to review the Kenda Equilibrium versus the Kenda Ibex and do a little talking about which tire I prefer and why. So let's get to it. So here's a little hint on the tire that I actually like. This is a takeoff of one of my other motorcycles that I did for another event. It's the Kenda Equilibrium. That is my number one choice, and I'm going to explain why. What I have next to it is the Kenda Ibex, which is also a great tire with a knobby type pattern. I wanted to test this tire. I'll back up just a tad bit. So I got this bike brand new. I got 3.5 hours on it, and it came stock with the Dunlop AT81, which is a nice tire. First thing I did was pull everything apart, put in the tubeless system. If you're not familiar with the tubeless system, it's basically an internal bead lock that you mount on the carcass that actually inflates and pushes the inner bead out on the rim and locks the rim on with 100 to 110 psi. Myself, I run 110 in it. And then the second one is another air chamber, and that would be your how flat or how hard or firm that your characteristics of the tire you want it to be. Myself, usually I run somewhere, like with this Equilibrium, I run somewhere 4 to 5 psi. With the Ibex, I mounted that up right after the AT81. So going back to the AT81, jumping around a little bit here. I went and did some testing on that out of Glen Helen on the REM track a couple weeks ago when I first got the bike all put together how I wanted it. I ran 2 psi with the AT81 to kind of break it in with the tubeless system in the outer chamber. I ran the REM track. I got great traction, great performance. I thought the characteristics of that tire on the track, I gave it a 10. I got to be honest with you. The AT81 front and rear worked real good as a pair for a motocross track out in Southern California. Then I took the bike back to some of the old loops that we did on Last Dog Standing, and I rode some of the washes. They were a little bit muddy, down in some real deep V's, down waterfalls with active water running. Had no problem going up or going down those sections with that AT81. Took that over. I thought, hey, maybe this is going to be my tire. Maybe the stock setup is going to be great. Took that over to the Enduro cross track while it's kind of a little wet, a little muddy still. Up and over and into the fire pit. I don't have the stability that I was looking for. As I'm going up the logs, I could feel the back wheel spinning and not hooking up and biting. So my second thoughts were, okay, I develop stuff. That's what I do, and that's why you haven't seen me on video in quite some time, is I've been working for a couple other clients doing product development. I go out and test, give things a rating, give good, accurate, measurable feedback for a manufacturer to come back and say, okay, hey, what do you think, this is the direction we should go? Yes or no, you know? So that's what I've been up to for the last maybe 6 months or so. But I'm always actively developing something in my mind. So as I get a new motorcycle, I'm developing what could be a little bit better, what could we change up to make the characteristics work out. Tires is the number one thing that you're in contact with the ground with. So my next thoughts was go from the AT81, which is a harder compound, a really tall knob. Work good motocross, work good out back, but I wanted a softer compound. So I went to the Kenda Ibex, and it's a wide footprint tire, nice spaced out knobs. I put that on with the tubeless system, 110 on the inner chamber, pushing it out once again, and I put 5 psi in the tire. It's got a relatively stiff carcass. As you can see, it's a real, let's see if this is showing up on camera, yeah. It's a real low profile tire that's got a really wide footprint. You know, you gotta take this, kind of turns in a little bit on the wheel, pulls in. But it's a soft compound, feels about like the same tire compound durometer between the two tires here. And I went out and tested with this out at Johnson Valley. Now that's my go-to place. Cougar Buttes, the Hammer Trails, you know, where King of the Hammers, King of the Motos is held. I know those trails and I know the characteristics of how my two-stroke. I got a KTM 300 XCW that's going for sale here real soon, so stay tuned. I bought this 2017 450 XCF to kind of replace my two-stroke, kind of getting away from wanting to mix gas. I can take one fuel with me out to the races, whether it's trials. I have a 4-stroke trials bike also, and kind of head into that direction just to let you know a little bit where I'm at. Back to the tires. So we got this wide footprint knobby out at Johnson Valley, and one of the things that I do is I ride this slab, and it's called the Grand Slab, and it's so steep that you really can't ride it directly straight up. The first maybe 15 to 25 feet is super vertical, and then it kind of tapers out a little bit, and it's got a crater in the middle that you kind of have to jump and make your way up to the top. That's one of the things that I evaluate how well the tire is going to stick in granite or in the rocks. So I went up there with the Ibex, and I made the first transition, made my right, and then you make a right, and then you're kind of side hilling as you're making your way to the top, and that's when I noticed the knobs were just not what I wanted as a characteristic. I was still hooking up, but I was drifting the motorcycle going up this slab. That's not something that you want to just take a stop and a break in the middle of, because you probably won't make it, and it'll probably be a little bit prequel to your crash coming. I'll say that. I noticed that I was getting yaw out of the knobs, not so much the tire, but the knobs I could actually feel slipping as I'm transversing this face. So I'm kind of going and feathering the throttle. I'm on the pegs, I'm feeling for traction, and I nurse it to the top, and I think, holy smokes, maybe I'll do this one more time to see if I can get a little better run at it. So I turned around, I came back down, and immediately made a second run. Usually the first one's got a little nerves involved. Took it up the second one with the exact same result. I could actually see my path because I laid down just a little bit of rubber on the granite slab as I'm going up. That reconfirmed how I feel about tires. Now, coming out of trials, we run super sticky, kind of narrow type tires. The Kenda Equilibrium for the big bike is something that kind of mimics that, but it's got a little bit, it's got a little bit more of a side knob, it's got a little bit more round of a profile, and it's made for the big bikes. So immediately after that trip, I came home, and this is a takeoff that I did from a trials competition on my 300. Pulled it off and I'm getting it set up for this weekend, where I'm doing a trials event. 2 events a year. We have an Enduro line in the trials section. The Plonkers Trials Club does this within the SCTA, so you can actually compete for a trophy in trials on a big bike. Now, there is a rule that they do allow me to compete with this bike and this tire in the trials class. I usually ride sportsman class and finish around mid-pack. Super fun though, most fun I have on a motorcycle. Going back, this reconfirmed how I felt about a motorcycle and how I set it up. I ride extreme, enduro cross, extreme enduro, king of the motos, last dog standing, trials events. I like rocks. A good day for me is a couple buddies, camelbacks on, and we work our way up a wash. Maybe we're doing anywhere from 1 to 3 miles an hour, and we work our way up a canyon, That's fun for me. I enjoy that. I enjoy this tire, and I'll tell you why. Not only will it climb the Grand Slab very well, like a trials tire, and hook up and good traction, it's got a taller profile to it. Now, I'm a little taller of a guy. I'm 6'3", and this tire physically is about an inch or an inch and a half taller than the Ibex mounted. You can see the difference in the profile. This is a low profile tire, this is a large tire. This one's super wide. This one is, what I would call somewhat narrow. They call it a 450, but I would call it more like a 110, if you were going to measure it out. Now with that takes away a little ground clearance, like if you're a shorter guy. But why I really like this tire is it does have that narrower contact patch, but it's actually a longer contact patch. But it's narrow and long versus short and wide. The short and wide, the outer knobs sometimes when you're side hilling or getting ready to get some drive to go up something, one of the knobs will catch something and throw you funny, and it won't allow for a straight drive into your obstacle. Where the narrower tire still has probably physically the same amount of square inch for footprint, I would imagine, but it's narrower and longer versus shorter and wider, if you're following me. So with this tire, I found that most of my drives, like let's say 95% of my drives, are not affected because the tire will actually yaw on the uneven terrain and give me drive to get up on the mountain. So I know I'm getting a little long and a little detailed, but that's why I prefer the Kenda Equilibrium over anything else that I've tested so far. I've tested the Golden Sticky, the Ibex, the AT81, which wouldn't be considered a sticky tire, but it actually works real well. If you were just going to ride some extreme in stuff that was loose rocks, that AT would be a good way to go. The Ibex is a nice way to go. For Endurocross, I probably wouldn't have a problem with it. But for Endurocross trials and all of that, I'm going to go ahead and stick with the Equilibrium because I like the characteristics. Excuse me real quick. What I'm going to do is I'm going to provide some links in the bottom. They're Amazon links, and I get a small little portion of kickback for directing traffic to Amazon. So if one of these tires interests you or you've liked this video, please hit like and subscribe. And if it's something you want to buy, hit a link below, and that helps me out a little bit and keeps the channel kind of funded. The downside with the Equilibrium and the tubeless system is that it's a very thin carcass. And I have had one buddy of mine when we were out testing for King of the Motos, and he has ripped the carcass. Now what that is you lose your secondary air chamber, but you still have the tire being pushed on. But being that the carcass of this tire is so soft, it's hard to work it back to camp. For instance, on the AT81, you can run that 0 PSI with a 5-inch slit on the side of it, and you could probably finish a 30-40 mile loop and not have a problem with it. Same thing with the Moto's Mountain Hybrid. I like that tire because it was a stiffer carcass. Why I got away from it is the durometer of the tire compound is a little harder than I prefer, and the Equilibrium won out over that. But that's something that you have to consider or be interested in a little bit, is the soft carcass, that if you did tear something, like, you know, let's say you're going to do a dual sport trip, because this is a Department of Transportation DOT certified street legal tire. You can actually ride this on your dual sport and have a good time on that. So I have my 450 that's been done by Thumper Racing as a 570. I call it my SoCal Dual Sport. It's got the exact same setup as this bike and the exact same setup as my 300. So if you've enjoyed this video, I know I'm a little long-winded this time, please hit like and subscribe. It helps me out a little bit. If you have comments or questions, comment. I'll try to get back with you as soon as I can. Thank you for watching, and if this is something you think you may want to do, I'll have a link to tubeless and the different tires that I actually use and endorse. So I'm Tim Roble, and I thank you for watching, and I'll catch you here next time. Here's a little bit better view, if you're still watching here, of the back of the tires. Now of course this is going to suck in a little bit as it's mounted up on the rim, but you can see the physical characteristics, the differences in how wide the tire is. And then profile wise, we're right here and there. So there is a little bit of difference between the two tires, but once again the Equilibrium is my choice. Thank you for watching.